Gosh, I've got so much to say on this topic right now. First of all, Beto O'Rourke is a complete and utter political hack. Second of all, I would love to question Beto O'Rourke and ask him: Are your armed security guards going to give up their AR-15s and their, weapons of war? I guarantee the answer to that would be no. Third of all, Beto O'Rourke has never in his entire life held a job. So, of course, all he does is run for political office.
Is that
So
true?
yes,
He's never had a job.
that is true. He inherited a bunch of money. His family's, fairly well off. He has never held a job.
Wow.
Okay. He is the consummate, politician. And as a consummate politician, he is constantly flip-flopping. He is, changing what he thinks at the, moment's notice. So back in February, he was saying, actually, I'm not going to, take your guns. But then as soon as this, next school shooting takes place, he immediately flip-flops and says, well, now we have to take all your AR-15s. And I don't care about the Second Amendment. It's just what we have to do, because he's just, trying to score political points. He has no chance of being elected in the state of Texas. There's no chance. I don't understand why he's doing this.
I just got a message from the Disinformation Governance Board, a fact check on Chris. He did have a job. According to his Wikipedia page, O'Rourke had a brief career in music during his college years. He first joined a band called Swipe.
That's a hobby. That's a hobby. That's not a job.
He was also a skateboarder. I think that was also
yes.
Take it up with the disinformation.
I'm talking about an actual job.
Right.
Jobby job.
Yeah, no, it's absurd. And I want to be careful about how I phrase this next statement, but a gun confiscation campaign, does he want violence to break out? Is that the goal here? I'm not advocating for it, obviously.
Well, no. He doesn't want violence to break out, but he wants to disarm the people so that the
how are you going to do
can
that?
Have complete and utter control, just like the Nazis did it, just like the Chinese did it under Mao, just like the Cubans did it under Castro.
How are you going to enforce that? How are you going to enforce taking people's guns away?
I mean, I'm not going to defend Beto's gun grabbing propaganda. But what I'm saying is the reason why he's doing this is because he does not want people to have that ability to defend themselves against a tyrannical government. That's what I think this is all about. So the Democratic Party for years, for decades, has been, on this quest to grab guns from people who want to use them to defend themselves. They aren't nearly as concerned about grabbing guns from criminals, because in Chicago all the time people are being arrested with guns who should not have them, and they are being let out back on the street the next day, whatever. So why is the Democratic Party, the modern Democratic Party, so obsessed with taking guns away from lawful citizens who just want to protect themselves? And here's a great example of why we need to have a Second Amendment and why people need to arm themselves. Because in Charleston, South Carolina, I believe it was a day or so ago, a man came in with an AR-15 and started shooting in a public place. Guess what happened? A woman killed him on sight because she was carrying a gun. That is why guns are necessary.
All right. So the good guy with a gun is a myth, because in that case, it was a good woman with a gun.
Well, you're just being a sexist, so.
Drop the mic. I'm done. Episode's over, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. That was the high point of the show. I see Andy over there celebrating. Let's do it. Jim, Beto O'Rourke saying this stuff, is he just saying it because he knows he has no actual power and that his plans wouldn't ever be put to the test because he's never going to be in a position to actually enforce them? Or do you think that this is actual true beliefs of him and other people like him?
I was trying to think of an analogy that would be worse than saying that we're going to come take your guns to the voters of Texas. And it is impossible to come up with an analogy of something stupider to say than that. So that is now the gold standard, because that is so far from a winning political position in Texas that it's hard to even quantify it. You might have to observe it from space or something. It's just impossible to measure without scientific instruments. But, there's the famous, phrase, or when people who are passionate about the Second Amendment, who realize what the Second Amendment is for and want to possess firearms to protect themselves and their family from all sorts of different threats, is come and take them.
Right.
And so this is what the irony is that, the real story, and it hadn't really revealed itself by the time you guys did the podcast last week. But, the big story down there in Uvalde, Texas, is the absolute incompetence of the police department, that they stood around for at least 40 minutes, letting children get slaughtered while they waited for the TAC team to come or to wait for other orders or to see, whatever. And their stories keep changing. It's a complete Keystone Cops operation down there in Uvalde. So who does Beto think is going to come around and collect those guns from all those Texans? The cops like those in Uvalde, like those incompetent guys are going to come take people's guns. And I think you kind of hit on this, Donnie, a little bit earlier, that what is the purpose of actually trying to carry out a gun confiscation program in the United States, but especially in a place like Texas? Is it to incite, frankly, firefights, shootings between citizens and the government? Because that's what's going to happen in a lot of places. If you go out to Amarillo, Texas, and try to take somebody's, gun collection away from them, you're probably going to end up in a firefight. And I don't know if the police certainly want to get into that, or you maybe have to send federal troops. I don't think they want to get into that. It's obviously just not practical. But what's always so ironic, especially somebody like Beto O'Rourke, is that most of the gun grabbers, and we're going to have a clip on this in a few minutes, most of the gun grabbers are completely ignorant about firearms. I mean, 100% completely ignorant about firearms. I guarantee you that if not Beto O'Rourke himself, but many of his supporters think AR in AR-15 stands for assault rifle.
Right.
It does not count. It does not stand for assault rifle. It stands for what was it called?
Armalite.
Armalite. That's right. Armalite rifle. So it's just the brand name. But it's this. You guys are a little too young to remember. I mean, this is probably the 15th gun grab attempt in my adult life. It's always some other kind of. Back in the day, it was the AK-47, and then it was certain kinds of pistols that had, some kind of special modification. Then it was rifles that had pistol grips. It's always some kind of appearance. It's always just some kind of cosmetic BS that triggers some kind of. For lack of a better term, triggers some kind of gun grab. And right now it's the AR-15. The AR-15 is the evil boogeyman that needs to be confiscated. But it's really down to a principle. And Chris nailed this right on the head. It's that the Second Amendment exists not to protect you, not to allow you to go deer hunting, and it's frankly not even to protect you and your family from marauders coming to your home, burglars or murderers or what have you. It is to ensure that the government understands that tyranny will be resisted. That is what the Second Amendment is there for. That's what the founders wrote it for. That's what all the debate about it was about. And so, that makes people in modern times a little uncomfortable, but I'm sure glad it's there because it's there for that reason.
Yeah, I could see people saying like, okay, so what? Some failed politician is saying these crazy things. Who cares? Like, the guy's not going to be elected to anything. At worst, he's going to be back into, playing drums at some terrible band. I don't care what he has to say, right? And maybe you're right. Maybe we're giving Beto too much attention, more attention than he deserves. So let's talk about a couple of politicians that actually have a little bit of power. Joe Biden being one of them. He's been talking about guns a lot, as you might suspect. And also, as you would suspect, he doesn't seem to know a whole lot about them. So we got a clip of Joe Biden talking. Let's only play like the first 20 seconds of this because there's like a helicopter in the background that's making a whole lot of noise. So it's not the best audio in the world, but I like to hear him speak sometimes. Go ahead and play this.
They showed me a x-ray. He said a 22 caliber bullet will lodge in a lung, and we can probably get it out, may be able to get it and save the life. A 9mm bullet blows the lung out of the body. So the idea is
go ahead and stop it there.
High caliber.
So yeah, he's talking about 9mm bullets and how they are these like high capacity, high velocity rounds that could obliterate somebody's inside as opposed to a 22 caliber thing. Which, just the problem with that logic alone is like, yeah, I'm pretty sure guns are meant to kill people. Like, that's their point. If we all want to go to like BB guns or something like that, those are even less effective than a 22. So I'm not even completely understanding his logic. He's like talking about it in a worldview where guns are only ever used to like massacre innocent people or something like that. I guess that's where he's coming from. But even when we're just taking him to his points about like the 9mm, I just did a little bit of Googling. I'm no gun expert, which is why I want to avoid some of those other topics that we were talking about at the beginning of this. But just a little bit of Googling, I found out that 9mm is the most common caliber for handguns in the United States. Handguns. More than half of the handguns sold in the U.S. In the last handful of years have been 9mm guns. So is Biden advocating for a ban on handguns when he's saying this stuff? No, apparently he's not, because as often happens, Biden's press secretary has to come in and explain what Biden really means when he says something that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So I've got this Newsweek article that says President Joe Biden does not support a ban on sales of handguns and would support one on assault-style weapons. White House press secretary, her name, told reporters during a Tuesday afternoon press briefing. Jean-Pierre said Biden would support a ban on assault-style weapons and on high-capacity magazines, but added he does not support a ban on sales of all handguns. So I've got a thought on this, but I'll let you guys do some talking first. Chris, what do you think of A, just Biden's comments here, and B, like just his apparent stance on not necessarily being against handguns, but assault style rifles?
Well, one of the first things that comes to my mind is more Americans were killed with hammers than assault rifles last year and almost every year. More Americans were killed with knives than assault rifles last year and almost every other year. And more Americans were killed by fists than AR assault rifles last year and almost every other year. So are we going to ban fist fighting and knives and hammers? Of course not, because it's not the instrument, it's the person. Joe Biden knows that. Joe Biden knows that the assault weapons ban in 1994 did nothing to curb gun violence, because once again, criminals do not abide by laws in the first place. Uvalde was a school, and schools are by definition gun-free zones. However, this guy went there anyways because he's a sick, demented, twisted person, and he wanted to do something terrible. And you know what? We should be much more concerned with stopping those kinds of incidents from happening with, a quick police response, maybe hardening schools, or maybe even actually preventing people who are mentally deranged from possibly buying these kinds of guns in the first place. I mean, it's just ridiculous that he would just ban AR-15s across the board, or any caliber, handgun, because one person, does something that's, that is, monstrous.
Yeah.
What about all the other people in this country and their rights?
It's worse than that, because, as like I said, Joe Biden is probably one of those guys who thinks AR and AR-15 stands for assault rifle. Like that's like that's how they would do it. But listen to that. If you remember that statement, he said that it was a surgeon friend of his who said, if somebody gets a 22 lodged in their chest, they can probably get that out. A 22 caliber rifle is the kind of rifle you teach a child how to shoot with. I mean, I shot those in Boy Scouts as a 12-year-old. Those things are, you probably shouldn't even hunt rabbits with a 22. I'm no hunter, but it probably doesn't have it may not have the stopping power to actually kill a rabbit. You would just injure it and have it torture itself living for 2 days, slowly bleeding out. But the idea that a 9mm bullet blows the lung out of the body. I mean, Joe Biden he's always saying things like this. And if there was a sincere attempt, if this was a sincere effort to do something about quote unquote gun violence, you would actually endeavor to know what you're talking about. A 9mm bullet does not blow the lung out of the body. Now, certainly It does more damage than a 22 caliber, round. And it does less damage, you would imagine, than a 45 caliber, the Magnum that you see in Dirty Harry movies, right? Big guns would do more damage. But if you were to ban ammunition based on, its ability to quote unquote blow lungs out of the body. I mean, it's illegal to hunt deer, for instance, with low caliber rounds, because you won't kill the deer. You will injure and torture them. And so there are certain rounds for certain purposes that are out there on the market, and they are used responsibly by, what are there, 400 million guns in the United States? There's more guns than there are people in the United States.
Right.
And per capita, it is actually a myth that these shootings happen all the time in the United States. That is per capita. That is not the case. It's actually multiple shootings like this. The classic, random public place. Somebody has a rifle and shoots multiple people. Right. That classic, tragic, awful case. Per capita population, these things happen more often in places like Sweden and Norway than they do in the United States. You will not hear a single mainstream media outlet tell you that truth, but it is the truth. But these people that want to ban guns, they are completely ignorant of guns, of policy. They don't know what they're talking about, which makes these efforts even more frustrating for people that do understand firearms, and even more important than that, understand why we have a right in the Constitution, which is unique to the United States. There is no constitutionally protected right in Britain or in the or I should say in Canada, to personally own a firearm. The Constitution of the United States, especially the Bill of Rights, outlines rights that you have as a human being created by God, and not rights given to you by government and then subject to being taken away. These are rights that exist before the government. Right. And one of those rights is be able to own firearms to protect yourself from any threats that you may see coming your way. That is a basic human right. And really, the United States is the only nation in the world, in the free world certainly, that has that right. And it's under constant attack. By whom? By people who want bigger government and want to control your life. That's it.
Yeah, I think Joe Biden a little bit unintentionally kind of revealed the trajectory of these types of bans. I've always said that when people say like, oh, we've got to do something, it's like, all right, like, let's say I concede. Let's do your something. I know that's not going to end all shootings and mass shootings and all of that. So when the next one happens, are you going to be content that we did that something? Or are you now going to be advocating for like the next step of doing something, right?
They'll keep moving the goalposts.
Absolutely.
Like they did during COVID.
No doubt.
What they do.
No doubt. And I think that this line by Joe Biden almost kind of reveals that, because it's just the next step in logic. If we did get rid of all assault weapons or any of these, whatever, AR-15s and all of that, are they going to stop then? Because any shootings that happen with a handgun or something, that's also going to be something that we have to deal with. So is the next step after dealing with assault rifles, dealing with anything that has a caliber of 9mm or higher? I think, and then Chris, you even mentioned like, the amount of people that are killed with stabbings, which is an issue in the UK where they have a lot of gun control. And does that stop them? No, there was calls not that long ago for different restrictions when it comes to selling knives. So like, it's just like a slow progression towards, a completely disarmed populace. Like that's what's some people, it's an insatiable a drive for some of these people. And if you were to compromise at any level, that's not going to slow down that drive at all. This is, I think, an insight into what that next step would be if they did accomplish the Beto plan of getting rid of all assault rifles and all of that. One other thing, real quickly, I'm very curious. Jim, you're muted. Classic.
That's all right. But, classic. Well, I have to cough once in a while. Still got COVID.
I do. There's one other thing mentioned in this, and we don't have to spend a whole lot of time on this, but there was another thing mentioned in this article from Newsweek that said the idea of 18. This is a Joe Biden quote. The idea that an 18-year-old can walk into a gun store and buy 2 assault weapons is just wrong. Now, he's saying that in the context of this discussion that's happening on a national level about whether or not the age limit of owning a gun should be raised from 18 to 21. Jim, do you want to put your thoughts on that?
That you need to be 21 to own a firearm in the United States?
Yeah, no, that's being proposed.
No, no.
I was thinking, because I the idea of what an adult was 50 years ago to what an adult is today seems to have shifted. And I could already tell a lot of people that are listening to this are like, antagonistic towards this idea, but like an 18-year-old back in like the 30s or something, he's got like a family of 5 and he's
Right.
running his own farm, and
Right.
like today they're sitting in their pajama pants watching TikTok videos and
Right. I'll
Yeah,
tell
but
you
Donnie,
what. I'll raise the age of owning a firearm if we make the age to vote the same place. In fact,
so that's what I was gonna say.
I'd be willing to put it at 30.
That's what I was going to say. If we're going to raise it to 21, let's raise everything to 21.
That's right.
well, are you also going to raise the age to join the military to 21?
Yeah,
because
right.
right
Well,
now,
that's
if you're
what I'm
18,
saying.
you can
No.
join the military. So
Yeah,
obviously,
everything.
an 18-year-old has the capacity to, own and operate a gun. Once again, why are we going to do these across the board bans and like age minimums?
Before I get a bunch
because
of
a couple people are off their rocker.
Oh yeah, no, I hear you, and I'm not advocating this. People, stop sending your comments. I could already tell that you're sending them. But if these people do say, "Oh, I think you should be 21," that's your response. Your response should be, "Okay, then everything should be 21." If you're not an adult, if 18 doesn't signify an adult to be able to own a firearm, then you shouldn't be considered responsible enough to sign contracts or to vote or to smoke cigarettes or to get a tattoo. Everything should be raised at 21. That's what your response should be. I'm not advocating for that.
Or get a student loan that you can't pay back.
Exactly. All of these things. All right. Let's quickly move north because I do have another whole nother topic I want to get to here. Let's move north of the border and visit our friend Justin Trudeau. Justin Trudeau, as you know, Prime Minister of Canada and a former member of the World Economic Forum's Young Global Leaders Project, is taking gun control prohibition a step further than anyone in the United States seems to want to go. Let's play Justin Trudeau.
We're introducing legislation to implement a national freeze on handgun ownership.
Oh.
What this means is that it will no longer be possible to buy, sell, transfer, or import handguns anywhere in Canada. In other words, we're capping the market for handguns. As a further part of this new legislation, we're also fighting gun smuggling and trafficking by increasing maximum criminal penalties and providing more tools for law enforcement to investigate firearm crimes. And we'll require the permanent alteration of long gun magazines so they can never hold more than 5 rounds.
How has this guy been elected Prime Minister in Canada? I just don't get it. I really, really don't get it. But so there you go. A proposal for a freeze on handguns, not these evil military-looking assault rifles or anything, handguns. So, Canada always seems a couple of steps ahead of us when it comes to the progressive agenda. So seemingly happening there. Doesn't seem like it would be too shocking for politicians to start proposing that here in America. Gentlemen, I'll give you your kind of last words on this, but I do want to save the last 15 minutes or so for our kind of final topic. So, Chris, anything to say on this? Jim, open to you.
Yeah, I mean, just real quick. So, as Justin Trudeau is banning, guns across the board in Canada, he also just legalized cocaine, meth, and fentanyl in British Columbia. So,
really, fentanyl? I heard cocaine.
Cocaine, yep. So, Justin Trudeau wants his population to be, stoned out of it and unable to protect themselves so that they will just be as pliant as possible.
Yeah, the cocaine thing, I've heard like conservatives being like, he's trying to ban guns, but legalize cocaine. I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. And the cocaine thing, I don't care. But fentanyl? That's insane. That's absolutely insane.